In this week's The News, women added to the list of groups targeted by the coalition to be treated like shit. School leavers fleeing the country where the Prime Minister thinks banning social media is a fix to all society's problems. Sunk costs to keep sinking ferry project from going under. And the Wellington Airport says, "Fly you fools," to iconic artwork. All that and more on this week's The News. Hello there, kia ora. I'm Paul and yeah, I know. Leading tonight's news, protest action all over the country happened today outside MP offices up and down the Mutu as the government repeals pay equity laws. On Tuesday, Brooke Van Velden, seen here looking for John Connor, Minister of Workplace Relations and second fiddle to the party that claims that they're all about equal treatment and rights for all, tabled a bill that would repeal the legal protections to ensure women were paid equal to men for comparable work across industries and cancelled 33 claims currently being processed from mostly government departments. According to economist Bernard Hickey, these changes and the changes to the threshold for reapplying will net the government an extra $17 billion over 4 years from industries like teaching, carers and nurses, which is only just more than the $14.5 billion tax cuts cost us last year in the budget, which disproportionately benefited the wealthy. Said Deputy Prime Minister Winston Peters, seen here thinking no one else heard that really loud fart, "We support this because it will stop people asking what is a woman. We've clearly defined it as someone who earns less than a man, and now no one will want to transition knowing that they'll have to take a pay cut." An Education Ministry report on Monday showed a record number of high-achieving teens have chosen to move overseas after finishing secondary school. The report shows 10% of the highest-achieving NCEA result achievers left the country once their study was finished in 2023. While the ministry hasn't looked into the reasons specifically why the moves are happening, it mirrors other trends of New Zealanders moving overseas and is more likely to occur with students from high socio-economic areas. According to the always balanced and never racist or misleading Hobson's Pledge, it's because students overseas don't have to deal with the Māorification of education, while students overseas claim it's because they're sick of racist old assholes trying to run the country. Education Minister Erica Stanford, seen here showing reporters her Macarena, along with Chris Bishop and Nicola Willis, have been caught using personal accounts for their ministerial emails, raising questions about the security of important data and why printers don't like their work email. Unlike secure government email, Google doesn't use end-to-end encryption, and users often have to unwittingly agree to allow Google full access to content and allow emails to help train AI models. This move has frustrated conservatives since they've been trying for over a decade to find a way to bring in the US culture war line, "But what about her emails?" But they never expected it to be one of their MPs to cause the problem. Said the Prime Minister, seen here meeting Queensland's latest police recruits before they fly out, "Look, what I'm saying to you is, yes, we would have been calling for her to be fired if she was a Labour MP, but clearly we can't do that here. What with multiple of my MPs doing this, that would just be rude." A new poll from the Taxpayer Union, which also has links to other astroturfing groups, the Free Speech Union and the Sensible Sentencing Trust, has released its latest Curia poll, a polling company known to ask misleading questions, which have led to claims of creating bias in their responses on multiple occasions and their resignation from the polling governing body, the Research Association of New Zealand. Said a spokesperson for mainstream media, "Of course we're not going to mention that bit when we promote the poll results showing an outcome for the centre-right parties we like, or how it came out the day after the government alienated half the population for being a woman, but the poll was done before all this happened." New data released from Elections NZ show the National Party took in almost $5 million in donations last year, nearly 3 times the amount of the nearest other parties. Under electoral law, every party must file annual returns on donations. National's highest donors included the man behind the Sistema storage empire, the man behind real estate company Barfoot and Thompson, the Canterbury Nationalists Trust, which you shouldn't Google because the words Canterbury and Nationalists end up with frankly way too many results that are going to put you on a watch list, and $350,000 from Nelson's Robert Wears. Said a spokesperson for the National Party, "We are always happy to see policymakers, donors, like these people support what we do. And we know some of these numbers are shockingly high, but we can assure you that won't be the case next year. Since Robert died in March, we're very sorry to see his wallet go." The National Party announced short-lived plans to ban children from social media this week. The move being framed as protecting children from the harms of social media, like the Prime Minister's TikTok account, and has nothing to do with how young people on the platform would spam his accounts with common sense questions a lot of their parents didn't ask before the election. The bill, however, failed after ACT voted against it, preferring instead to put it through the Select Committee stage. Said a spokesperson for ACT, "We are never keen to limit the ways in which ACT party leaders can communicate with minors through apps like Facebook and Snapchat." 3 News has revealed that documents out of the office of Mental Health Minister Matt Ducey, seen here showing he couldn't have done it because he has nothing in his hand, show public-facing reports had been changed to minimise the number of workers the mental health sector needs to ensure delivery of services. The report shows someone in Ducey's office specifically requested the removal of the admission and other fields which highlight the extreme shortfall in staffing levels after feedback from Health Commissioner Lester Levy, while Ducey claims it was not a direct request from him. Said Ducey, "Look, over there, it's Jason Momoa," before running away and hiding under his desk. Despite overwhelming opposition and public feedback, the government is set to progress with the ACT Party's Regulatory Standards Bill after Cabinet signed off on it. And in a callback to last week's This Week's The News, it seems like it will be introduced before the Waitangi Tribunal can proceed too far into its urgent claim investigation. All 76 supporters of the bill, which includes the Atlas-linked New Zealand Initiative, claim it's about good lawmaking, and the other 23,000 submitters pointed out that this bill puts wealth and property rights, often overriding Te Tiriti in the process, as its primary goal. Said Seymour of the process, seen here on a panel called "Reasons ACT Members Shouldn't Have Social Media for Themselves," this law doesn't stop politicians from making bad rules, and to prove it, we're going to see how many bad laws we can make before being voted out at the election in December. The government this week announced an amendment to the Wildlife Act to be passed under urgency that would allow the killing of native animals, including the kiwi, bats, and lizards, to happen to allow the building of roads and other infrastructure. After a court case found that the Wildlife Act did not create the ability for the Department of Conservation to issue exemptions from prosecution over accidental death of native wildlife, the government quickly worked to change the laws to re-enable it to happen, said Environment Minister Tama Potaka, seen here listening to Simeon Brown try to pronounce Te Reo Māori. "The best way to protect the scaly and slimy little creatures is to vote us back in at the next election." Kiwi Rail this week revealed that over $500 million had been spent on the cancelled IREX ferry projects to date, with more costs to come. It is unknown still what the cost of the break fee is going to be for the government cancelling the previous contract by text message days after getting into power to pay for their landlord tax changes, the ongoing costs to maintain the depleted and aging current ferry fleet, or the actual costs for smaller replacement ferries that won't be delivered until the end of the decade, instead of the end of the year as originally scheduled. But Rail Minister Winston Peters, seen here looking at what's on the top shelf, was unrepentant, saying, "Just because I'm the minister who was in charge under both governments dealing with this issue does not mean I should take any responsibility at all." The government has admitted to reimbursing about $20,000 in travel costs to Donald Trump's former Deputy Chief of Staff to show up in Auckland and say things like, "You can do it," from the audience of their recent infrastructure showcase. Chris Liddell, seen here with a very stable genius who told people to drink bleach to cure a virus, was recognized as the one person in the first Trump administration who actually worked for a peaceful transfer of power after the January 6th insurrection. He also gave a presentation that the National Party offered to help him on, that the Prime Minister called, quote, "a very thoughtful, a very considered presentation." When asked why the government paid for his flight costs, infrastructure spokesperson Chris Bishop said, "Well, we were going to offer him a citizenship like we did with Peter Thiel, but it turns out he was born in Matamata, so we had to find something else." The Catholic Church has selected its new leader in the fastest conclave of the 21st century. Pope Leo XV, seen here as Cardinal Prevost, was introduced to the world in the early hours of the morning New Zealand time and seen by many Catholics as a liberal along the lines of his predecessor. The secretive conclave can usually take days, and in one instance took almost 3 years, but the process, which uses a voting system known as First Past the Popes, took less than 24 hours. It's understood the conclave went with a native English speaker to save time on translations, as they expect most of his prominent work is going to be to denounce everything Donald Trump does and tell the Vice President to stay away from him. Last Sunday was Star Wars Day, which led to some rather embarrassing social media moments from the worst people on the internet. President Donald Trump posted this on his Truth social media account, claiming to be stopping the Sith, a group of space fascists who silence those they don't agree with, work in the shadows to manipulate the population, control media narratives, and wield red lightsabers, While New Zealand's own ACT Party tried to claim changes on the RMA will make it easier to build big projects like the Death Star, said David Seymour. Good, let the hate flow through you. That's been our overarching philosophy for making policy for over a decade now. And finally, in the words of Pippin Took, the Eagles are coming to an end at Wellington Airport. Officials announced earlier this week the tenure of the Eagles over the food court of 12 years was about to end, like it's the third age of Middle-earth and the king is about to return. The future of the iconic birds from Lord of the Rings is currently uncertain, but they will be put in storage until a decision is made, while Weta Workshop has something more Wellington-specific to put on display later this year as part of the renovations for the building. Personally, I think the airport should go all in on the Lord of the Rings thing. Custom signs that say, "You shall not pass here without removing fresh fruit and vegetables," or signs and security checks that say, "You can keep your secrets." No, you can't. You can't keep it secret and keep us safe. Or even just an entry sign to the airport that says, "I'm going on an adventure." Because "Fly, you fools" is the kind of slogan that would be picked by a former CEO of Air New Zealand who happens to now be Prime Minister. Anyway, that's this week's The News. Have a fantastic time, live long, prosper, and we'll catch you all next week. Hey, thanks for checking out today's video. Make sure you like, share, subscribe so you get more updates as we go along. We deal with these guys for the rest of the year.